How does $60 Uncle Nearest command a $100 hype using Dickel-sourced Tennessee? This 11 hidden gems $60 ranking dissects black-owned marketing genius versus actual juice. Nearest Green taught Jack Daniel, but who's teaching you value now? Agree or disagree? Let me know below and hit subscribe to stay in the loop. 11. Westward American Single Malt. American Single Malt just got TTB official recognition in 2023 after decades of lobbying, and you're already late to the trend at $59.99. Westward in Portland uses 100% malted barley aged in new charred American oak, required by new regulations, versus Scotch's used casks, creating bourbon-like sweetness that Scotch purists call bastardized malt whiskey. The controversy. Virginia Distillery CEO Gareth Moore admitted, even if Westward ferments similar mash bill to us, new oak alone results in unrecognizably different product. They're fighting over what defines the category before consumers even know it exists. New charred oak accelerates aging and color acquisition dramatically, adding vanillins and char compounds Scotch drinkers reject as overpowering tradition. At $60, you're paying early adopter tax for category TTB only formalized last year. This is speculative investing, not drinking. Serve neat to impress guests who think American whiskey means bourbon only. 10. Sagamore Spirit Double Oak Rye. Maryland rye tradition died in the 1970s. Now Kevin Plank, Under Armour founder, spent millions rebuilding Sagamore Distillery, marketing pre-prohibition Maryland style that never existed this way. Double oak means finishing standard MGP-sourced Indiana rye, likely 95.5 mash, in toasted wave staves for additional oak influence. Basically admitting base rye needs enhancement. Reddit recommends it around $60–70, but the controversy is Kevin Plank's corporate vanity project using bought whiskey until his own stocks mature. Under Armour struggling financially, yet Plank keeps pumping money into whiskey operations, suggesting ego, not profit motive. The liquid shows aggressive rye spice, vanilla from double oak, toasted sweetness, but you're paying for Baltimore Harbor View distillery overhead, not juice quality. Serve in Sazerac, where Peychaud's bitters mask the corporate desperation. 9. Nika from the barrel. Listen, kid, this $70 to $110 Japanese blend is what happens when Nika takes leftover Yoichi and Miyakikyo single malts, mixes with grain whiskey, then bottles at 51.4% ABV in a tiny 500 milliliter square bottle tourists photograph for Instagram. The pricing is absurd geography arbitrage. $80 in US, $100 in Australia, but $40 in Japan duty-free because they're dumping domestic excess on export markets. Japanese whiskey prices exploded 200–300% since 2015 after Jim Murray awarded Yamazaki Sherry Cask World Whiskey of the Year, triggering global shortage and speculative hoarding. Nika discontinued all age statement Taketsuru expressions, 17, 21, 25 year, because they couldn't meet demand, now pushing NAS blends like From the Barrel at premium prices. I've poured enough of this to know it's good whiskey. Rich, complex, sherry influence, high proof provides structure, but you're paying $100 for $40 worth of liquid plus Japanese craftsmanship mythology. Use in highball with soda water like they actually drink it in Japan, not neat like Western whiskey nerds Instagram. 8. Woodford Reserve Double Oaked. Fuck your finishing process theater. Brown-Forman takes standard Woodford Reserve, dumps it in second heavily toasted barrels for additional maturation, charges $55–$65 versus $35 for regular, and Bourbon Reddit loses their minds defending or attacking it. The controversy splits exactly 50-50.
Half claim it's dessert bourbon that masks Woodford's thin base with oak sugar. Half defend it as legitimate flavor innovation. Brown-Forman's $3. $8 billion revenue proves they've mastered extracting maximum margin from minimum aging. Why wait 8 to 10 years when you can heavily toast barrels and simulate richness in 6 months additional finishing? The innovation isn't in distilling, it's in barrel char manipulation, optimizing consumer perception versus cost. Serve to bourbon beginners who want smooth, sweet profiles, or make old-fashioned where sugar and bitters make oak overkill redundant. 7. Knob Creek Rye 10-year. Beam Centauri actually aged rye whiskey 10 years and priced it $60 to $70 when most rye barely hits 4 years. That alone makes this hidden gem and category obsessed with young, spicy profiles. The 10-year age statement disappeared and reappeared multiple times between 2020-2024, depending on barrel inventory, creating allocation confusion that hype chasers love and value drinkers hate. Standard 55% rye mash, not MGP's 95% high rye. This tastes like bourbon's spicy cousin, not face-punching dill bomb. Reddit debates whether Knob Creek 12 Bourbon or KC Rye 10 represents better value, missing the point that Beam makes both at massive scale with identical profit margins. At 100 proof in 10 years, you're getting legitimate age and proof without secondary market games. Serve neat to appreciate what actual rye age tastes like versus young MGP everyone calls rye character, or Manhattan where age stands up to vermouth. Enjoyed the video? Smash that like button and sub so you never miss a drop. 6. Redbreast 12 Cask Strength. Irish Distillers, Pernod Ricard subsidiary, charges $65 to $75 for cask strength version of their $60 standard Redbreast 12. And the whiskey community accepts this margin stacking because Irish pot still whiskey. Tradition sounds exotic. Single pot still means mix of malted and unmalted barley distilled in pot stills, a uniquely Irish method that died out everywhere else because it's inefficient and was literally created to dodge British malt taxes in 1700s. You're paying premium for production method invented as tax evasion. The liquid is legitimately excellent. Rich, oily, spicy, sherry cask influence from ex-Oloroso barrels, but Pernod Ricard's $12+ billion revenue proves they've optimized heritage pricing. Redbreast 12 standard at $60 already pushes value limits. Cask strength at $75 is pure margin expansion. The controversy: does slightly higher proof, $55 standard versus $65 cask strength, justify 40% price increase? Market says yes because consumers don't do math now. Serve neat at room temperature to taste what tax evasion innovation created, or with single water drop to open pot still spice. 5. Old Forester 1920 Prohibition Style. Brown-Forman charges $60 for bourbon they claim replicates Prohibition style by bottling at 115 proof. That's fiction. During Prohibition, 1933, Old Forester was one of 6 distilleries allowed to produce medicinal whiskey at much lower proof for pharmacies. The 1920 in the name and vintage label design sells nostalgia for an era that nearly destroyed American whiskey industry. But strip away marketing and you've got excellent high-proof bourbon using Brown-Forman's 72-18-10 mash, aged 4 to 5 years in heavily charred barrels, bottled without chill filtration at proof that actually delivers flavor. Reddit consensus surpasses many higher-priced options people seek out because $60 for 115 proof beats $80 for 90 proof. Simple math. Brown-Forman controls Old Forester, Woodford Reserve, Jack Daniel's portfolio, generating billions, yet 1920 remains available at MSRP, unlike artificially allocated competitors. The hidden gem? They're not playing scarcity games because volume sales at $60 exceed margin games at $100.
Serve neat to taste high proof done right, or old-fashioned, where 115 proof stands up to dilution and sugar.
4. Uncle Nearest 1856 Premium Whiskey. Nathan Nearest Green was enslaved man who taught Jack Daniel distilling. His descendants now own Uncle Nearest brand that's either revolutionary blank.
Owned whiskey rectifying historical erasure, or opportunistic sourced whiskey marketing play, depending on who's arguing. The company launched 2017 with full Hollywood backing, Breaking Bad's R.J. Mitty as ambassador, massive press coverage, and immediate distribution in all 50 states. That's not organic growth. That's coordinated capital deployment. At $50 to $60, the 1856 expression uses sourced Tennessee whiskey, likely George Dickel or Jack Daniel's Overflow, finished in their own barrels after company built actual distillery in 2019.
The controversy splits on racial lines more than taste. Supporters celebrate black ownership and historical recognition. Critics argue it's another celebrity-backed sourced whiskey using social justice marketing to command premium versus commodity Tennessee whiskey pricing.
The business model is genius. Use Nearest Green's story, true and compelling, to differentiate identical Tennessee whiskey from George Dickel at $30. Charge $60, invest profits in actual distillation, eventually transition to self-produced stock. Serve neat to support black-owned spirits business, or recognize you're paying $30 for Brandon, $30 for liquid.
3. Whistle Pig 10-Year Straight Rye. Vermont's Whistle Pig markets farm-to-bottle rye whiskey at $60 to $85 depending on market, except until 2015 they were 100% sourcing MGP Indiana rye and barely admitted it until Dave Pickerell, former Maker's Mark master distiller, forced transparency. Founder Raj Bhakta, former apprentice contestant and politician, bought Vermont Farm, planted rye fields for photos, aged MGP juice in his barrels, called it Vermont whiskey now.
The 100% rye mash at 10 years is legitimately rare. Most rye is 51% minimum or 95% MGP. This is actual 100% rye aged decade. Proven rye can handle time without bourbon's corn sweetness balancing.
But you're paying $70 to $85 for whiskey that cost $15 a gallon wholesale from MGP, aged in Vermont basements with Whistle Pig branded everything. Now they're actually distilling since 2015, but 10-year bottles are still blend of Vermont distilled, maybe 30%, and MGP, 70%, until 2025 plus when full Vermont stocks mature. Serve neat to taste what 100% rye at 10 years achieves, or remember you're funding Raj Bhakta's political ambitions and Vermont property values. Like, sub, and drop a comment if you're vibing with the content. 2. Jack Daniel's Single Barrel Barrel Proof. All Tennessee whiskey is bourbon filtered through sugar maple charcoal. All Jack Daniel's is Walmart parking lot whiskey, yet this single barrel proof at $65. 75 consistently scores 90 plus on Whiskey Advocate and beats 100 plus allocated bourbons blind, proving brand prejudice obscures quality. Brown-Forman produces 140 million bottles Jack Daniel's Old No. 7 annually at $25, making it world's best-selling American whiskey and symbol of everything whiskey snobs hate, until they taste single barrel proof blind and rate it excellent now. The cognitive dissonance is delicious. Same distillery, same mash, 80% corn, 12% rye, 8% malt, same Lincoln County charcoal filtering process,
just barrel selection and proof difference, yet perception gap is $25 versus $70.
Red whiskey forums refuse to admit Jack Daniel's Single Barrel competes with craft bourbon because that destroys their identity built on rejecting mainstream. But blind tastings don't lie. At 125 to 140 proof from single barrels aged 5 to 7 years in Warehouse One's upper floors, this delivers heat, oak, caramel, char, exactly what bourbon enthusiasts claim they want. The liberation. Once you accept Jack Daniel's can make excellent whiskey, you're free from whiskey snobbery. Serve Nate to force friends confronting their biases, or realize all distinctions are arbitrary and brand loyalty is marketing construct we internalized. 1. Yellowstone Select Kentucky Straight Bourbon. Limestone Branch Distillery resurrected Dead Yellowstone brand, discontinued 1993, using blend of sourced MGP bourbon and their own distillate, priced at $60, competing with established brands. And somehow it works because nobody remembers original Yellowstone was bottom shelf garbage. The controversy, founders Steve and Paul Beam, yes, those Beams, left family company, started Limestone Branch 2010, bought Yellowstone trademark, now marketing heritage bourbon that has zero connection to original Yellowstone distillery that closed 1952.
This is resurrection through trademark acquisition, not actual heritage. But the liquid is legitimately well constructed. Blend of 4 to 7 year bourbons showing caramel, vanilla, oak balance at 93 proof, finished in wine casks for select expression, adding fruit notes now. The genius, buying dead trademark with name recognition but no baggage. Nobody alive remembers drinking 1940s Yellowstone. Blending quality sourced whiskey with own stocks as they mature. And Beam family name provides credibility despite leaving the family business. Reddit debates whether Yellowstone Select justifies $60 or if it's just another sourced MGP repackage, missing the point that all bourbon is commodity until barrel selection and blending create differentiation. At $60, you're paying for Beam family expertise in barrel selection, not Yellowstone heritage that never actually existed at this quality level. Serve neat, recognizing heritage as reconstructed mythology, or old-fashioned, celebrating that sometimes resurrection exceeds the original.